Out of all the Disney villains, none seem to embody pure, unmitigated evil like the main character of the segment Night on Bald Mountain and Ave Maria in Disney's 1940 classic, Fantasia. This film was not a success upon its release, however, in retrospect, many rank Fantasia up there with the best films Disney has ever created. A big chunk of the film's appeal is owed to the final segment, the uncompromising vision of evil set to Modest Mussorgsky's composition, Night on Bald Mountain. The title refers to Slavic folklore regarding an infamous Witches Sabbath that takes place once a year on, you guessed it, Bald Mountain. The dark figure who presides over the Sabbath in this animated segment is none other than the ancient Slavic god of evil, Chernabog, the Black God. I briefly covered Chernabog in my video about the gods of the American Gods series, but in this video I want to go a bit deeper not only into Chernabog, but also the Witches Sabbath and the folklore that inspired Night on Bald Mountain. But before we begin, I just want to issue a warning that some of the myths and stories referenced in this video are a bit on the disturbing side, so let's get started.
You could never disturb me.
Russian composer Modest Mussorgsky originally completed his series of compositions called Night on Bald Mountain on St. John's Day, June 24, 1867. However, the compositions were revised several times afterward. The piece was inspired by Russian and Ukrainian literature or legends regarding a witch's Sabbath, thought to take place on the eve before he completed the piece, St. John's Eve. Folklore and myths regarding the so-called Witches Sabbath exist in many cultures, and in fact, the accusation that someone had participated in one was often used as evidence during the witchcraft trials of the early modern period.
On this day, you have been arraigned for the horrible crime of witchcraft.
In spite of many references to the Witches Sabbath in literature and folklore, there is no reliable evidence that such rituals ever occurred. There are many variations on the specific rituals and rites enacted at the Witches Sabbath. Often these include a gathering of mainly females, but also men, demons, and sometimes spirits of the dead, who dance and cavort, perform debaucherous sexual acts, spells, and a black mass, which is an inversion of or desecration of the Catholic Mass. The purpose of the rituals is to ally the participants with the devil, or rebaptize them in his name. The participants may even have to demonstrate their allegiance by performing the Kiss of Shame, which involves, you can see what's going on here. As a result, the participants were thought to obtain magical powers. For example, if the flying ointment was applied to a witch's back, they would obtain the ability to fly. The Witches' Sabbath is thought to be held on a single night of the year in a specific location, but the exact date and location vary depending on the local folklore of different regions. One of the most popular legends places the gathering at Brocken, the highest peak of the Harz Mountains in northern Germany, and it is thought to occur on Walpurgis Night. In fact, in the intro before Fantasia's Night on Bald Mountain segment, the narrator, Deems Taylor, states,
"Here on Walpurgis Night, which is the equivalent of our own Halloween, the creatures of evil gather to worship their master."
However, there are some discrepancies in this statement. First of all, the German custom of Walpurgis Night is not exactly the equivalent of Halloween. It's celebrated on the eve of St. Walpurga Day, which occurs on May 1st. On the night of April 30th, the custom of lighting bonfires is thought to ward off evil and witchcraft and protect against the Witches' Sabbath on Brocken. Secondly, there are variations on this custom and other mountains thought to be the location of the Witches' Sabbath. In other parts of Europe, a variation of Walpurgis Night occurs on the 23rd of June, the night before the feast of St. John the Baptist. St. John's Eve, the night before Mussorgsky completed his composition, is also thought to be the night when the witches gather. Given that Mussorgsky is Russian, he may have been inspired by Eastern Slavic and specifically Ukrainian folklore regarding Lysy Hore, literally Bald Mountain in Ukrainian. In this local variation, the Witches' Sabbath is thought to occur on either the Lysy Hore or Zamkova Hore hills of Kiev, or Wysa Góra, a hill in the Świętokrzyskie Mountains of Poland.
Świętokrzyskie style!
Despite Taylor's mention of Walpurgis Night, Disney decided to go more with Slavic folklore rather than Germanic folklore for their animated adaptation of Mussorgsky's composition. This is most evident by the name and depiction of the segment's villain, Chernabog. In most folklore regarding the Witches' Sabbath, the dark figure who presides over the festivities is none other than
Satan!
but the Disney studio probably thought this was a little too harsh for a family film with a primarily Christian audience. Instead, they dipped way back into the ancient folklore of the composer's home and recast the role with Chernabog, the ancient Slavic god of darkness and evil, to whom all bad things are attributed. In Proto-Slavic, Chern translates as black and bog as god, so Chernabog literally translates as black god. But let's be honest, I'm totally butchering the pronunciation. Cut me some Slavic slack already.
But there is no mercy in the Lord of Evil.
As I mentioned in my American Gods video, there are very few reliable sources regarding Chernabog. Aside from modern accounts of local folklore, the only historical text that mentions Chernabog is the 12th century Chronica Slavorum. This chronicle was written by the Saxon priest and historian Helmold, as an account of the northwestern Slavic tribes, mainly the Wends and Polabians. The passage that mentions Chernabog is as follows. The Slavs, too, have a strange conviction. At their feasts and carousals, they pass around a libation bowl, over which they utter words. I should not say of consecration, but of execration, in the name of the gods. Of the good one as well as the bad one, they profess that all propitious fortune is arranged by the good god, and all adverse by the bad god. Hence, also, in their language, they call the bad god Diablo or Chernabog, that is, the black god. The good god mentioned in this passage is known as Bielobog, which translates as white god, and is thought to be the Slavic god of lightness and good, as well as Chernabog's dualistic counterpart. However, there are no reliable historical sources for Bielobog's name. Given that Helmold was a Christian priest, his views of the Slavic pagan religion may be somewhat biased or inaccurate. Perhaps he viewed their polytheistic religion through a Christian lens. Thus, it is difficult to determine Chernabog's importance among the ancient Slavs, and whether or not he truly had a place among their pantheon. Regardless, folklore and pop culture references regarding Chernabog have made him one of the most popular figures in Slavic mythology in recent history. For the Night on Bald Mountain Ave Maria segment of Fantasia, Disney based the visuals on the concept art of Danish illustrator Kai Nielsen, but used the Ukrainian-American animator Bill Tytla to animate the segment, perhaps to maintain a Slavic influence on the segment's visual style. Hungarian-American actor Bela Lugosi was initially used as a reference for Chernabog, but Tytla didn't like the results and instead used Wilfred Jackson, the segment's director, as model for Chernabog. Mussorgsky's composition, Nielsen's visual style, and Tytla's animation meshed to create what is perhaps the darkest and scariest moment in Disney's film catalog. At the end of the segment, the darkness is broken by the sunrise, and accompanied by the peaceful sounds of Schubert's Ave Maria. Chernabog recedes back into the protection of his mountain shell, where he will remain dormant until the next Witches' Sabbath. A line of angelic figures carrying torches crosses the land, signifying the end of the dark night, and likely this is a reference to the bonfires of Walpurgis Night, or St. John's Eve. Some of the scariest and most iconic horror stories draw from Slavic folklore. I've often wondered what it is about this culture's stories that make them so dark and haunting, and honestly, I don't really know. But hopefully this video helped you understand how Slavic folklore influenced one of Disney's darkest creations. Don't forget to like this vid and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments below if you want me to delve further into Slavic or other kinds of folklore, or the backstory of other iconic characters. And if you want to support this channel, please donate to the channel Patreon listed in the description below. Until next time.